Tashi Duncan. She's gonna turn a whole family into millionaires. She'll have a fashion line, a foundation.
You were incredible today.
Thank you.
I mean, it wasn't even like tennis. It was an entirely different game.
Hey there, movie buffs, and welcome to another review of a recently released title. Today, in this episode, I'll be covering the latest release, Challengers. The movie, originally set to release in September 2023 and open the 80th Venice International Film Festival, was postponed because of the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike. It finally opened last Friday, the 26th of April. So since the title was announced and the first trailer was released, I developed a conflicted relationship with this title. After all, the film combines two things I don't really care for: a sport I'm completely indifferent to, tennis, and the directorial efforts of a director whose movies I could never really finish watching, Luca Guadagnino. Call Me By Your Name was extremely boring, and the less said about the unneeded Suspiria remake, the better. But thanks to stellar reviews and a massive advertising campaign with tons of social media buzz, I was persuaded to take a chance on what has been considered the hottest movie of the year. Turns out my reservations were somewhat misplaced, but the reality is that Challengers is far from the must-see event it was made out to be. Challengers follows a non-linear narrative starting with Art Donaldson, a world-leading tennis player who struggles to regain his form after recovering from an injury. His wife, coach, and former tennis wunderkind, Tashi Duncan, enrolls him in a challenger event. She hopes he recovers both his confidence and form. He's about to play the final against a down-on-his-luck aging player, Patrick Zweig. We then get context to the trio's past lives. In 2006, Patrick and Art, close friends and tennis partners, meet Tashi, sparking a mutual attraction. Patrick and Tashi start a relationship, but due to unforeseen circumstances, she ends up with Art. Their lives take different paths, with Patrick pursuing a professional tennis career and Art and Tashi attending college together. Jealousies arise, leading to tensions and conflicts, especially after Tashi's career-ending injury. Despite best efforts to support her, Tashi's dreams are shattered, altering the dynamics of the relationship forever. Unable to play, Tashi is determined to still win the court through her partner and pupil, Art. Guadagnino's latest can be perfectly summarized as an overload of images, a tale of excess disguised as a minimalist movie, and really an output with little style and little to no substance. There are a few highlights that manage to outweigh the sea of negatives that surround this movie, but more on that later. In its simplest form, Challengers follows the same footprints as all those post-Rocky sports movies from the late 1970s and early 1980s. I'm talking about Robert Evans's production of Players and Robert Towne's personal best. Movies that aim to tell a romantic story using the hardships and pressure of high-performance sports. In the case of Challengers, the movie uses as a map a bipolar script penned by Celine Song's husband, Justin Kuritzkis. Bipolar in the sense that it offers great characterization with extremely well-written characters, with clear drives, goals, and inner battles, but delivers them with appalling dialogue that completely destroys the impact that the three characters have. I think this could have been mitigated had the director opted for a more subtle yet effective take on the story. The most glaring indicator of this success is, well, the score, and I may be alone on this one. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross from Nine Inch Nails have constantly delivered fantastic scores for titles such as The Social Network, which earned the duo an Oscar, Soul, and Mank. This time around, they created a soundtrack that may very well be good as a standalone score, but really doesn't fit the movie at all. The techno-heavy sound elevates even the most mundane scenes to an almost laughable level, bringing an awkward intensity to moments that require more subtlety. Without giving away any spoilers, here's how the score came across to me. Yeah, so on this point, I believe the movie becomes marginally better if watched with no sound on. The other major issue lies with Guadagnino's failure to commit to a shooting style, which results in a bloated movie. Sometimes the director thinks he's Paul Greengrass directing a Jason Bourne movie. Other times, he thinks he's directing an ad for a virtual reality hardware piece. The slow motion overload looks like it came straight out of a Zack Snyder movie and gives the title an intentionally funny tone. This aspect is also tied to another major issue I found in Challengers: lack of subtlety. I think I pointed out enough. I mean, kudos to the director for helming a movie that he wanted to see. It just so happens that it isn't what audiences want to see, with plenty of decisions adding little to no value to the plot. The blatant homoerotic tone makes the volleyball game scene in Top Gun look tame by comparison, and is particularly annoying in the deflated, anticlimactic end scene. The movie's major highlight, besides characterization, sits with Zendaya and her performance. It's her show, and she truly shines and manages to elevate what would otherwise be a piece of garbage into something watchable. As Tashi Duncan, she is the engine of the most toxic power couple since Frank and Claire Underwood graced our screens 11 years ago. As a no BS, win-at-all-costs professional, she's up there with Faye Dunaway's Diana Christensen. Zendaya's Tashi is a conflicted character. On one hand is her desire to succeed and the weight she carries from her injury. On the other, we have her desire for a deeper and more meaningful relationship and an off-court victory against her words, "I don't want to be loved." Her performance alone sells the movie. As for Challenger's title as the hottest movie of the year, well, it may very well be. But in an era where Gen Z, a generation that wants less sex in TV and movies, dictates more and more what we see, there's remarkably neither steam nor spark, let alone fire, in this title. When compared to movies like Body Heat, Challengers offers nothing to write home about. Cruel Intentions had more spark in its opening credits than the whole 2 hours of this movie. The media may want to spin the title as a box office success, but the reality is very different. With a budget of $55 million, 12 of which account for Zendaya's paycheck, the movie is set to open to $15 million in the US alone. Even if the movie proves to have legs, it will be far from the hit it was expected to be. And this raises a question about the future of new bankable movie stars. With no IP behind them, we find the likes of Austin Butler, Sydney Sweeney, and even Zendaya presenting a mixed track record at the box office, and truly one that can compete with the stellar runs of the A-listers of the past. They may be popular on social media, but when it comes to the real world and the dollar and cents metrics at the box office, that's a completely different story. Times have changed, with entertainment sources expanding. But the question remains, can they justify their salaries? Back to Challengers and my final thoughts. As I mentioned, the movie has some highlights, but plenty of lows. It's difficult to predict if the title would have been better had things been done differently. Also on the genre, romantic sports entries are very much a case of hit or miss. The movie has been accused of having an exaggerated length with a runtime of over 2 hours, which only confirms how bloated the title is. Maybe, well, actually, I know I'm not the target audience for this title, but if it fails to recoup its budget, let alone turn a profit, the question remains, who was this movie made for?